On July 24th, 2025, the world lost more than a wrestling icon. It lost a pop culture giant. Hulk Hogan, born Terry Bollea, passed away at the age of 71 after a sudden cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida. But to understand the magnitude of that loss, you need to understand what he meant to an entire generation. Hogan wasn't just a man in tights performing stunts in a ring. He was the face of a revolution. In the 1980s, when professional wrestling was still considered a niche spectacle, Hogan emerged like a supernova. Towering at 6 feet 8 inches with platinum blonde hair, a horseshoe mustache, and biceps he dubbed 24-inch pythons, he wasn't just playing a character. He was creating a movement, Hulkamania. Every time he ripped his shirt apart or cupped his hand to his ear to listen to the crowd's roar, it was more than theater. It was electricity. He inspired millions of kids to say their prayers, take their vitamins, and believe that strength wasn't just physical. It was about heart. Hogan was a Saturday morning cartoon come to life, a hero you could cheer for, and in some ways, the first wrestler to become a global celebrity. His impact went beyond the squared circle, bleeding into music, movies, television, and even politics. But behind the muscles and the fame was a complex man who battled personal demons, faced public scandals, and weathered storms that would break most people. This is the story of how Terry Bollea became Hulk Hogan, how he conquered the world, and how he eventually found peace. If you're ready to walk through the rise, fall, and legacy of a true American icon, don't forget to subscribe. Hulkamania never dies. It evolves. Long before the world knew him as Hulk Hogan, he was simply Terry Bollea, a shy, chubby kid born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia. The youngest son of Pete Bollea, a construction foreman, and Ruth Bollea, a homemaker and dance instructor, Terry's early years were far from glamorous. His family moved to Tampa, Florida when he was still young, where he grew up in a modest home filled with blue-collar values and discipline. Though he would go on to become a symbol of strength, Terry struggled deeply with body image as a child. In interviews, he often recalled being teased for the size of his head and his weight, confessing that he avoided taking his shirt off at the beach out of shame. But Terry also had a wild imagination and a deep admiration for larger-than-life characters. As a teenager, he immersed himself in music, playing bass guitar in a local rock band called Ruckus. The band would occasionally pack small venues, giving him his first taste of performing in front of crowds. Yet, it wasn't the stage that ultimately captured his soul. It was the wrestling ring. In high school, Terry and his friends would sneak into the shop class and mimic wrestling moves they'd seen on television. His idols were legends like Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham, and it wasn't long before dreams began to replace doubts. Though he showed promise as a baseball pitcher and even drew interest from professional scouts, an arm injury derailed those ambitions. Wrestling, it seemed, was waiting for him. What began as childhood play acting would soon become the foundation of an empire and the beginning of Hulkamania. After high school, Terry Bollea enrolled at Hillsborough Community College and later attended the University of South Florida. But academics couldn't hold his attention. His heart was in music and muscle. He devoted himself to weight training, spending hours at the gym sculpting the body that would later become his trademark. One fateful day at a local gym, his life took a decisive turn. There, he caught the attention of professional wrestlers Jack and Gerald Briscoe. Impressed by Bollea's massive frame and presence, they introduced him to wrestling promoter Hiro Matsuda. Matsuda didn't go easy on Bollea. In fact, during their very first training session, Matsuda broke Bollea's leg, a harsh lesson designed to test his resolve. Most would have walked away, but Terry returned after healing, proving he had the grit to survive the brutal world of wrestling. In 1979, he began performing under names like Terry Boulder and Super Destroyer, competing in smaller wrestling promotions throughout the southern U.S. Then came the moment that changed everything. A television appearance where Terry was interviewed alongside Lou Ferrigno, the actor famous for playing the Incredible Hulk. Terry's physique dwarfed Ferrigno's, and the nickname, the Hulk, stuck. Soon, he adopted the full stage name Hulk Hogan, a name that would become legendary in households around the world. His charisma was undeniable. His sheer size, booming voice, and confident swagger made him stand out. Vince McMahon Sr., the owner of what was then the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, WWF, took notice and signed him. Hulk Hogan was officially born, and he was just getting started. By the early 1980s, Hulk Hogan had become more than just another name on the wrestling card. He was a rising star poised to change the industry forever. His breakthrough moment came in 1984 when he defeated the Iron Sheik to win the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. This victory wasn't just a personal milestone. It was the birth of something much bigger, Hulkamania. Hulkamania wasn't merely a wrestling gimmick. It was a cultural phenomenon. Kids across America wore red and yellow shirts with the words Hulkamania blazoned on the front. Action figures, lunchboxes, and posters featuring Hogan filled store shelves. His message of say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and believe in yourself became a rallying cry for millions of young fans. Hogan was more than an athlete. He was a role model, a superhero in real life. Standing 6 feet 8 inches tall and weighing over 300 pounds, Hogan had the perfect mix of physical dominance and charisma. His matches weren't just fights, they were spectacles. He could draw in an audience with a single hand gesture, cupping his ear to the crowd as if to absorb their energy. When he ripped his shirt apart before a match, the arena would erupt with deafening cheers. Hogan's popularity extended far beyond wrestling. He became a household name, appearing on talk shows, magazine covers, and even commercials. His success marked a turning point for professional wrestling, transforming it from a niche sport into a mainstream entertainment empire. And yet, this was only the beginning. The stage was set for one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history, one that would solidify Hulk Hogan as a legend. If there was one moment that etched Hulk Hogan's name into the annals of pop culture forever, it happened on March 29, 1987, WrestleMania 3. Over 93,000 fans packed the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan, setting a record for the largest indoor attendance at the time. The main event? Hulk Hogan versus the seemingly unbeatable Andre the Giant. At over 7 feet tall and weighing more than 500 pounds, Andre was a mountain of a man. Few believed Hogan had a chance. But Hogan was no ordinary wrestler. He was the embodiment of American heroism, confidence, and determination. The crowd was electric, every moment pulsing with tension. Then it happened. Hogan scooped up Andre, held him aloft, and body slammed him to the mat. The arena exploded. Broadcasters dubbed it the slam heard round the world, a feat that seemed to defy physics and logic. Hogan dropped the leg and secured the win, cementing his legacy in the process. That match became one of the most replayed, referenced, and remembered events in wrestling history. It wasn't just a victory. It was a spectacle that showcased the emotional highs of sports entertainment. Hogan wasn't just a champion anymore. He was now a cultural icon, a superhero come to life in red and yellow tights. WrestleMania 3 elevated the WWF brand and proved that pro wrestling could fill stadiums and capture mainstream attention. Hogan's body slam wasn't just a move, it was a moment of myth-making. Kids everywhere recreated it in their living rooms, and fans still talk about it today. But as Hogan's fame soared to unprecedented levels, new challenges loomed just around the corner, ones that would shake the very foundation he built. By the late 1980s, Hulk Hogan had transcended the boundaries of the wrestling ring. He was on cereal boxes, in Saturday morning cartoons, and the star of every child's bedroom wall. He became the first wrestler to host Saturday Night Live, and in 1989, he starred in his first feature film, No Holds Barred. America couldn't get enough of the Hulkster. To many, he represented more than entertainment. He symbolized strength, resilience, and unapologetic patriotism. But behind the curtain, the world of professional wrestling was beginning to show its darker side. The pressure to stay on top was relentless. Hogan was wrestling nearly 300 days a year, enduring grueling matches and carrying the weight of the WWF's booming popularity on his massive shoulders. Injuries piled up. The wear and tear on his body was immense. Neck damage, back pain, hip issues. Behind the scenes, like many wrestlers of the era, Hogan turned to painkillers and performance enhancers to keep going. In the early 1990s, the WWF was rocked by scandal. The U.S. government accused the organization and its head, Vince McMahon, of distributing anabolic steroids to wrestlers. Hogan was subpoenaed and eventually admitted to using steroids. Though he wasn't charged with a crime, the damage to his wholesome image was done. The very icon who had urged kids to train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins was now facing backlash for not practicing what he preached. With his star beginning to dim and the public's trust shaken, Hogan stepped away from the WWF in 1993. The golden glow of Hulkamania was fading, but the next chapter would bring a shocking reinvention. When Hulk Hogan left the WWF in 1993, many assumed his days as a wrestling icon were over. But Hogan was never one to stay down for long. In 1994, he stunned fans and critics alike by joining World Championship Wrestling, WCW, a rival promotion owned by media mogul Ted Turner. For a while, he continued his red and yellow persona, waving American flags, defeating bad guys, and playing the hero. But something was missing. The fans had grown older, tastes had shifted, and Hulkamania's shine was beginning to dull. Then, in 1996, came one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history. At Bash at the Beach, Hogan, long the face of wrestling heroism, betrayed his longtime fans and turned heel, aligning with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall to form the notorious faction, the New World Order, or NWO. Ditching his classic gear, Hogan donned black and white, grew a goatee, and embraced a darker persona, Hollywood, Hulk Hogan. The heel turn shocked the wrestling world. Cheers turned to boos, and Hogan relished it. This bold reinvention gave him a second wave of superstardom. The NWO storyline became one of the most successful angles in wrestling history, catapulting WCW to ratings dominance over WWF for 83 consecutive weeks. Fans loved to hate Hollywood Hogan, and Hogan, once again, was the center of it all. He proved he wasn't just a relic of the past. He was adaptable, relevant, and still the biggest draw in the business. The man who once preached righteousness now embraced rebellion, and fans couldn't look away. But even the greatest reinventions have a shelf life, and soon the lines between character and real life would blur in unsettling ways. By the late 1990s, the WCW experiment had begun to unravel. Storylines grew convoluted, egos clashed backstage, and fans started tuning out. In 2001, WWE purchased WCW outright, ending the famous Monday Night Wars. And once again, Hulk Hogan stood at a crossroads. Many wondered if the industry had passed him by. But in 2002, the unthinkable happened. Hogan returned to WWE, stepping back into the ring where his legend was born. At WrestleMania X8 in Toronto, Hogan faced off against The Rock in a match billed as Icon versus Icon. The crowd, expected to support the younger, flashier Rock, erupted instead in overwhelming support for Hogan. Cheers thundered through the stadium, and chants of "Hogan, Hogan" filled the air. In that moment, the old magic was back. Hogan was visibly moved. He shed the black and white NWO attire and returned to the familiar red and yellow. Hulkamania, it seemed, had one more run. Over the next few years, Hogan feuded with younger stars like Triple H and Randy Orton, proving he could still draw crowds. His final major match came at SummerSlam 2006, where he defeated Orton in a classic legend versus legend killer storyline. Although his in-ring time dwindled, Hogan remained connected to wrestling through guest appearances, documentaries, and Hall of Fame inductions. In 2005, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, solidifying his place as one of the greatest ever to step into the squared circle. But behind the curtain, real-life challenges were mounting. Family turmoil, public scandals, and personal heartbreak loomed like dark clouds, reminding fans that even superheroes can bleed. As Hulk Hogan's time in the ring slowed, his personal life became a headline-grabbing saga of scandal, heartbreak, and public fallout. In 2007, tragedy struck when his son, Nick Bollea, was involved in a devastating car crash that left his best friend, John Graziano, with lifelong injuries. The legal proceedings and media scrutiny that followed cast a long shadow over the Hogan family. In 2008, Nick was sentenced to 8 months in jail for reckless driving, while Hogan and his then-wife Linda's marriage began to unravel under the strain. Just 1 year later, the couple's divorce was finalized. Linda walked away with 70% of their liquid assets and nearly half ownership of Hulk's business ventures. A massive financial and emotional blow to a man who once stood at the top of the world. but the worst was still to come. In 2012, a leaked sex tape featuring Hogan and the wife of his friend, radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge, hit the internet. Hogan claimed he had no idea he was being recorded, but the real damage came in 2015 when transcripts of the video revealed Hogan making racist and homophobic remarks. The public backlash was swift and brutal. WWE cut ties with him immediately, removing all references to him from its platforms and suspending his Hall of Fame membership. Sponsors vanished, merchandise disappeared, and fans were divided. Hogan apologized publicly, saying he was ashamed and not the same man today, but the controversy left a scar that would take years to heal. The hero of millions had fallen hard. The same man who once represented the power of belief and virtue was now facing the toughest opponent of his life, himself. Just when it seemed Hulk Hogan's career had reached its lowest point, an unexpected legal battle reignited public interest in the fallen icon. After the sex tape was leaked, not just on shady forums, but on the popular media site Gawker, Hogan, under his legal name, Terry Bollea, took action. He filed a lawsuit for invasion of privacy, seeking justice for the humiliation and emotional distress the leak had caused. What started as a personal court case soon evolved into one of the most pivotal legal showdowns in modern media history. Behind the scenes, Hogan had a powerful and unexpected ally, tech billionaire Peter Thiel. Years earlier, Gawker had outed Thiel's sexuality without his consent, and he never forgot. Quietly, he funded Hogan's lawsuit as part of a broader plan to bring the media company down. The case went to trial in 2016, and in a stunning verdict, the jury sided with Hogan, awarding him $140 million in damages. The verdict shocked the media world. Gawker filed for bankruptcy, and in August of that year, its assets were sold to Univision. Later, Hogan settled for $31 million, but the impact was clear. This wasn't just about a sex tape. It was about setting boundaries on privacy and media overreach. The trial turned Hogan into an unlikely poster child for personal dignity in the digital age. It also became a case study in how billionaires could weaponize the legal system against the press. Though his image had been tarnished, Hogan's courtroom victory became a powerful, if complicated, chapter in his legacy. He had slammed opponents in the ring, but this time, he brought a media empire to its knees. Following the Gawker trial, Hulk Hogan reemerged, not as the indestructible hero of old, but as a humbled man seeking redemption. His public apologies, though met with mixed reactions, reflected a person who was learning from his past rather than running from it. In 2018, WWE began slowly reintroducing him to fans, and by 2019, Hogan officially returned to live WWE programming, his Hall of Fame status reinstated. While some fans welcomed him back with open arms, others remained wary. But Hogan, ever the showman, embraced the complicated emotions with grace. Outside the ring, he focused on rebuilding his life. He married Sky Daly, a yoga instructor 25 years his junior, in 2023. The couple kept a relatively low profile, opting for quiet stability in Clearwater, Florida. Hogan also reconnected with his children, Brooke and Nick, both of whom had grown into adulthood with their own share of struggles and headlines. His daughter Brooke, once a reality TV and pop star, had become a mother to twins in early 2024. Hogan expressed joy at becoming a grandfather, calling it one of his greatest titles yet. Professionally, Hogan launched new business ventures, including his light beer brand, Real American Beer, which began distributing across 17 states in 2024. He also continued making appearances at wrestling conventions, fan expos, and special WWE episodes, including his last appearance on Monday Night Raw in January 2025. Fans were struck by how reflective and grounded he had become. The fire in his eyes remained, but now it came with wisdom, not just bravado. Though his life had taken many turns, some glorious, some regrettable, Hogan proved that redemption is possible, even for the most public of figures. While Hulk Hogan's wrestling persona dominated headlines, his ambitions had always stretched far beyond the squared circle. As early as the 1980s, Hogan sought to expand his brand into film and television. His first major movie appearance came in 1982 as Thunderlips in Rocky III, starring alongside Sylvester Stallone. The role was brief but electric, and it introduced Hogan to Hollywood. A few years later, in 1989, he starred in No Holds Barred, a wrestling-themed action film that, while not a box office smash, solidified Hogan's crossover appeal. Throughout the 90s, Hogan appeared in a string of campy but memorable family-friendly films like Suburban Commando, Mr. Nanny, and Santa with Muscles. Though critics panned them, children adored them. And for Hogan, it was about brand longevity, not Oscars. His face was everywhere, from cartoons to talk shows to Saturday morning toy commercials. In 2005, Hogan took his fame to reality TV with Hogan Knows Best, a VH1 series following his family's life in Florida. It gave fans a glimpse behind the curtain, showing Hogan as a protective father and sometimes clumsy husband. The show ran for 4 seasons and spun off into Brooke Knows Best, focusing on his daughter's music career. Entrepreneurially, Hogan was always hustling. From energy drinks and frozen burgers to a short-lived restaurant called Hulk Hogan's Pastamania, he tried everything. Perhaps his most famous miss came when he passed on endorsing what became the George Foreman Grill, opting instead for a meatball maker. Still, Hogan never stopped building. Whether through business, entertainment, or sheer willpower, he remained committed to staying in the spotlight, even when the world moved on. He knew that being a legend meant always evolving, even when the stage lights dimmed. As the years wore on, the physical toll of nearly 4 decades in the ring became undeniable. Hulk Hogan's iconic body, once seemingly indestructible, had been battered by countless matches, stunts, and surgeries. By his own count, Hogan underwent more than 24 procedures, including multiple back and knee operations. In 2024 alone, he underwent a complex neck fusion surgery to address lingering spinal pain. Each step forward came with setbacks, and his mobility became limited. Yet, he kept smiling, flexing for fans, and telling stories with that same spark in his eyes. In interviews, Hogan spoke candidly about aging, regret, and the choices he made, both good and bad. He admitted that he probably should have quit wrestling in his 40s, but the roar of the crowd, the adrenaline, the spotlight, it was all too addictive. Retirement wasn't a clean break for Hogan. Even after his final official match in 2006, he made sporadic appearances in Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, TNA, and continued doing fan events into his 70s. The fans never forgot him, and Hogan never stopped being grateful. In the final year of his life, Hogan appeared at the 2024 Republican National Convention, delivering a fiery speech in support of Donald Trump. It was controversial, on brand, and entirely Hogan. He also took pride in becoming a grandfather, sharing glimpses of quiet joy with his family away from the camera. Then, on July 24, 2025, after years of surgeries and complications, Hulk Hogan suffered a sudden cardiac arrest in his Clearwater, Florida home. He was rushed to Morton Plant Hospital but was pronounced dead soon after. The news spread like wildfire. Hulk Hogan, the man who once seemed larger than life, was gone. But as fans would soon say, legends never truly die. The day Hulk Hogan died, millions across the globe mourned, not just a wrestler, but a symbol of strength, charisma, and resilience. Tributes flooded in from fans, celebrities, and fellow wrestlers. Social media timelines were filled with nostalgic clips. Hogan slamming Andre the Giant, tearing his shirt in the ring, or delivering his signature line, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy had long been cemented. In total, Hogan was a 12-time world champion, a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer, and the face of the wrestling boom of the 1980s and 1990s. He wasn't the most technical wrestler, nor the fastest or flashiest, but no one drew a crowd quite like the Hulkster. He was the bridge that took pro wrestling from regional shows to global stadiums, from the fringes of entertainment into the center of pop culture. Without Hogan, there might not be a WrestleMania, a John Cena, or even a Rock. His impact reached far beyond the ring. He inspired generations to dream big, to flex their muscles with confidence, and to believe that heroes could exist in real life, even if they came in bandanas and mustaches. And while controversies may have scarred parts of his journey, they never erased the magic he created for millions of fans. Today, his legacy lives on through merchandise, memes, highlight reels, and countless kids who once wanted to grow up to be just like him. Hulk Hogan wasn't perfect, but he was unforgettable. Because legends, especially those built on the strength of 24-inch pythons and millions of believers, don't fade. They echo forever. As the world says goodbye to Hulk Hogan, the final chapter of his life feels less like an ending and more like a full circle moment. From a bullied kid in Tampa who hid his body at the beach, to a muscle-bound icon who stood tall before millions, Hogan's journey was never just about strength. It was about reinvention, redemption, and resilience. His story wasn't perfect, but it was real. He stumbled, he soared, he failed, and he fought back. And through it all, he reminded fans that greatness isn't about being flawless. It's about showing up every single time, no matter how hard the fall. For 4 decades, Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was a living myth. Children idolized him, adults debated him, and the media couldn't look away. He made you feel something, whether it was awe, excitement, or even disappointment. That's what true legends do. They make an impact. And Hulk Hogan's impact is immeasurable. In the final years of his life, he found peace with his family, embraced his role as a grandfather, and remained proud of the legacy he helped build. When asked in a podcast interview how he wanted to be remembered, Hogan simply said, as someone who gave his all, someone who showed the world that you could overcome anything if you believe in yourself. And so we remember him, not just as a titan of wrestling, but as a man who lived loudly, loved deeply, and inspired endlessly. Rest in peace, Terry Bollea. And to all the little Hulkamaniacs out there, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and never stop believing.